there, guys. So I'm sorry this is a day late, but I ran out of time last night to get it done. So this is lesson 7, and I used the same source as I did for the last lesson. So some of the things I'm going to say make absolutely no sense to me, and they may or may not make sense to you. So we're going to first start out with a word game. And in this word game, I am going to show you or tell you where they believe the term witch actually comes from. So they're dating back to 890, and that's when the Old English word Wicca meant a man who practices magic. And in 1990, so 100 years later, they produced Wiki, and that becomes the female version of Wicca. And the original pronunciation was that the CC was pronounced TCH, so it was pronounced Witchka, and then it fell into today's pronouncing, which is Wicca. So it kind of started with the whole entire movement that started in the 1940s when Gardner came out and just called everything Wicca. Men, female, it's a whole new religion at that point. The definition of the word has changed a lot in 1,000 years in between Old English and the 1940s. And no matter how Gardner got the term, he provides his own definition. So you have to really decide which path you truly walk. Do you prescribe to the modern Wicca, or do you actually go back and predate that religion? Now, this is where this article gets really sketchy for me. So, the label witch, they're talking like Old English times. So this would be anywhere in the AD era. They even refer to BC era, where Romans actually crucified witches as well. So that is why the label witch was offensive even to those who practice magic. Basically because I'm assuming they didn't want to get labeled and hung on a cross. So it was connected with people who practice magic that would harm people. So somebody out there long, long ago said that witches hurt people, therefore witches are bad. So everybody that practiced any form of magic didn't want to be associated with the word witch. And that remained the same until about the 20th century, when the definition of witches changed. And it goes on to say that modern witches have reconstructed and reinvented various pagan practices. They have not been a formed religion until the 20th century. Really? Okay. Then all those myths that we heard about people digging up information from, cave drawings back to like Neo-Paleolithic times don't count, I guess. I don't know. So I just don't believe a lot of the shit that this guy says, so that's why I'm bringing it to you, because I just think it's actually comical. That article states that the idea that only the practice of witchcraft by ancient culture gives validity to modern witchcraft is about as strong of an argument as that saying ancient Christians believing the book of Genesis gives validity to that of the modern scientific claims of creationism. So I don't know what you take away from that statement, and that's really up for you to determine. That was an exact quote from that article. And it then goes on to say, like, the next paragraph, that it doesn't matter how old of a religion Wicca is. It doesn't mean, it doesn't matter if it's 700 years or 7 years. The point is that it emerged from somewhere and it's not been practiced. But what I really find to be contradictory in this whole entire article is if you go up a couple paragraphs and you read that whole entire thing, that witches are reconstructing and reinventing various pagan practices. Doesn't that mean that those practices existed? They had to have. You just said they did. But now you're saying that we can't use those practices because that's too new modern age. Or some shit like that. I don't get it. It's contradictory. Therefore, so now what they're saying is that modern witchcraft refers mainly to a skill, and that skill is to practice various forms of magic. It's a skill that many many adopt as part of their spirituality. Wiccans, or followers of Gardner's witch cult religion, just don't get to define it for everyone. So, at the end of the day, they say witchcraft is not new as far as the name, but the practice that we practice now is not the same from our ancestors, the pagans. Mind you, they never say that pagans don't exist, even though the terminology pagan did not come into existence until Christians came into the control of everything. So, they never attack pagans as a religion. And yet, pagan is not a religion. It's not. It's an all-encompassing term for people who don't believe in Jesus Christ. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to put together that the fact that if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, then he couldn't have possibly come into existence in the conversation. Because it's pre-Jesus Christ. Okay, anything pre-Jesus Christ, anything in the BCs that existed, still existed. It was still there. It just didn't have the name that the Christians attached to it. So if it was there before Christianity, doing what it's doing, flip to now, and it's still doing the same thing, then isn't that a history? Isn't that where we stand? When you say you're reconstructing something of an old pagan religion, and you're reinventing it, you're saying that it was there, people knew it was there before the Christians, and that overall, this dude came around in the 1940s just to screw it all up for us. So, I don't even like the term that they use for this guy. They, in Gardner's witch cult religion, cult? Hold the phone! Cult? Really? You can't call it a cult. It's not even close to a cult. And then the article goes on to say that, the practice of various forms of magic is what defines witchcraft. Now, this is where people can start to argue that there are witches in every form of religion. I don't agree with that, because practicing rituals and spells and calling to a different god does not make you a Christian witch. It makes you something else. You can't be Christian and be a witch. By main definition, even in this article, with all the other information that's out there, it's not possible. Technically, it's possible to be a satanic witch because you are practicing spells, and if you go back to the nitty-gritty of the term witch being something that was attached to people who harmed other people, you can have that. But you can't have people who claim not to worship false gods then say that witchcraft is a religion that worships at least one female and at least one male god, and say, I'm a Christian witch. Well, pray do tell. Which two gods do you follow? Because that's the definition of it all. So, that's your thought for the day. See you guys later.